This is Drunken Discourse, and I'll tell you why. Because we can no longer call ourselves Barstool Rants or Barroom Rants, because apparently there is a group of young men and perhaps women that have taken upon themselves to call themselves, Barstool? And they are a bunch of racist shitfucks, so we have no other choice but to change our name. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm actually very grateful for that, because the barroom, barstool thing is kind of a hokey concept. So, yeah, I'm not a big bar guy. So, yeah, now that I think about it, it's actually a much better move for us to change the name, which we have landed on Drunken Discourse, which is literally could not be a more descriptive term for what we are. We're having to reform the way we display our product, which I hate to refer to it as a fucking product. I mean, that's just lame. We are not here to capitalize on political discourse. We are literally here to perhaps make a living at political discourse. You're talking to two people that literally could give a shit about how big our houses are. We are literally compelled by good-natured pursuit and values that come from hard experience and nothing but a desire to love people. And also to stand up and stand down the awful assholes in our planet that seek to make life worse for your average human being.
So as you watch the episode that will follow this intro, we are still in that episode calling it Bar Stool Rants.
Yes.
We also mess up a couple times, say Barroom Rants or
yes,
something.
Because turns out that's what you do when you consume alcohol. That's you do things wrong. So... yeah, we're going to be... you're definitely going to see... All four of you are going to see the... the growing pains of what it takes to be a discourse-oriented political podcast. Yes, it is true that both of the people involved in this, me and the guy Josh here, we are left-leaning guys. We do believe that the right is heard enough. For God's sakes, we have a hard-line right-wing president. And we have our own opinions about that, some of which may be offensive, some of which may be, hey, how dare you? Like, we don't really care what you think. We just want you to hear what we have to say and what the people that may want to come sit down with us have to say. And then in return, what you get as a reward for listening to our rambling nonsense is you get to be heard. If you want us to discuss something, bring something up, whether it has anything to do with workers' rights, feminism, our country's international politics, anything, you bring it up. And the thing is, like the man said, we are not going to just be political. If you know what, we're both huge fans of music. We're both big movie fans. Anything you want to bring up, we more than likely will have a 2 cents to add to it. So, because not only are we extremely weird, diverse people, we also do our research. To make a long story short, which I'm actually not all that good at, you're welcome at this table, whether you're actually here with us or not. If you leave a comment or you leave anything with us, you know what, you're probably going to get through, and it's probably going to get discussed. Because you deserve to be heard too. That's just the way it works. I mean, that's the whole point of it, really, is so that there can be an effective sword wielded against censorship and against ideological leanings. You know, because a lot of the times, whenever the right is really doing well, everybody wants to be deaf to what the left is doing, and vice versa. Everybody, no matter who is president, no matter who gets voted for, no matter what is going on, no matter what the media shows us, everybody deserves to be heard. That is what we believe in. We are egalitarians. We do believe in absolute rights for everybody. But this is Drunken Discourse.
More.
That's perfect.
No, that's perfect. Well, here's some more.
Well, here's a whole half.
Yeah. Okay, well, to Barstool Politics.
Barstool.
No, wait, damn it, I got it messed up.
Look what you've done.
But what are we?
Barstool Rants.
Barstool Rants.
Staunch.
L'chaim.
Oh! Tasty.
Spilled over.
On your cardigan.
And on
Your
Drayton's,
spicy cardigan.
and on Drayton's office chair. I also stole my office chair to take home
Hey!
as well. I literally stole everything I had.
You're like really Jewish.
They knew that when they hired me.
You were excruciating Jewish.
They saw my yarmulke and my tzitzits. I intentionally wore them. I was downright Hasidic when I walked in from my
Yeah, you walked in, you were like, motherfucker, I've seen the desert.
40 years.
40 years, bro. Hire me. Great cardio.
No, I did intentionally make sure to look very Jewish. I did that with any job interview I went to after I left.
Because Jews are inherently professional.
But no. Here's the actual thing. After I left the manual labor force, because their culture is very different.
Yeah,
and I was younger. I wanted to evade people perceiving me a certain way. So, but when I started getting into my profession, software engineering, anytime I went to an interview, I looked as Hasidic as I could for two reasons. One, and one of them sounds bad on my part, and I'll say it is a little manipulative, but one, if they're racist, they won't take me and I don't want to be there. Good. I win there. Two, I peacock. I stand out among other candidates.
Which shows a certain amount of joie de vivre. It shows a lot of backbone. It shows, because if you're willing to do that at a job interview, there's going to be like, yeah, this kid's got ambition. This kid's, yeah. I don't think either one of those sound bad because, frankly, racists deserve to be manipulated. And also, yeah, who doesn't want to show out? I mean, hell, I dress relatively conservatively unless I'm going to like a metal show or something. Then I look like I'm right out of the 1980s, the flipped up hat and just kind of like, like an Anthrax album logo.
Yeah.
But
with that, I guess starter, let's kind of tell everyone why we're here and what this is.
We're recording?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, if you haven't guessed already, basically based on our demeanor, this is Barroom Rants. And pretty much what we're here to do is obviously just make our opinions heard. We're a couple of schmucks from Alabama that literally just, we don't have any political sway. We don't have any power really other than the platform that we have here. Pretty much we're just here to decompress the therapeutic prospects of doing this, and also just to really to give you guys a voice too. Anybody that watches this, even if it's 10 people, just, hey, let us know what you think, man, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So, in a sentence, how would you describe what we're going to be talking about today in general?
Well, I would think a blatantly disruptive, against the grain perspective of daily life.
And in particular, what about daily life?
Well, one thing that I would like to actually talk about today is workers' rights.
Yeah.
What really does bother me, and this is every day, is, it doesn't matter what you do for a living. It really is like, if you work in a factory, if you're manufacturing a chemical processing plant or Burger King.
Yeah.
One of the things is that there's this really dishonest veneer that I think a lot of business makers are taught to have, where you try to make the worker feel like they're a part of a family. Oh, we're a family here.
Yeah.
And they're never listened to. They have to practically walk on eggshells. Hell, they walk on thumbtacks to ask for a raise. They're given very unreasonable hours, very unreasonable situations where, I've seen companies, I'm not going to mention any names, companies I've been involved with, that their point system is so strict that you could literally get fired for having a flat tire. Yeah. And we can go into the long and short of what we both believe, but I think it's also, there's more to talk about there, I think.
Yeah.
I think that we need to stop preaching this false freedom to workers. It's not. There is no right to work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. Is like the whole right to work laws and things like that. I just don't agree with them.
Yeah. Okay. So you talk about this false freedom that we teach workers or drill into our workers.
Yeah.
Could you expand on what does that mean?
Well, it's just kind of like, it's just little things like, if you're being sexually harassed, make sure you tell an employer, or if you feel like you're being unfairly paid, or anything that goes on in the workplace, well, make sure you talk to your supervisor about it, or make sure you talk to your team lead about it. And I'm like, that's a load of crap. I bought that at one point and went and talked to my team lead, or, depending on where I worked, and it accomplished nothing. And here's what I don't understand. This is what they're expecting you to believe. Your company is mistreating you. Complain to the company. That's what they're telling you.
Yeah.
That's like saying, hey, that guy's bullying you. Tell him to stop.
Yeah.
That's the most insanely idiotic thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Nobody has ever, well, I'm sure maybe it's happened a couple times, but nobody has ever talked their way out of being mugged.
Yeah.
Sometimes force is necessary.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a union guy. I believe in unions. I totally believe in the introduction of democracy into the workplace. I don't think it should just be a bunch of single-parent underlings doing the best they can to make sure mommy and daddy corporation are happy. I don't think that's really a fair work environment. And also, I don't think it's good for mental health.
Yeah.
I think it's basically just the pursuit of... This is what I think it is. When you live that kind of life, you're basically pursuing peace. You're not pursuing prosperity for you and your family. You're pursuing, I don't want to get fired.
Yeah.
That's not life. That's not living.
Yeah.
So for me, it should be democracy. It should be workers should be able to go, you know what? That sounds like a load of crap to me. And I'm not going to hang with that, dude.
So would you say that, because these ideas are similar, or they're at least adjacent to what socialism is about, of the workers almost in a way also owning the businesses that they work at. Now, pure socialism is about that.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts into the relation of those?
Well, I think it would be disingenuous to call myself a socialist, because I'll be honest with you, up until about 5 years ago, I didn't know what socialism was.
Oh, and what got you into that then?
I'm not, like I said, I'm not a socialist. I think I just got curious because I started hearing the word a lot. Bernie Sanders and all those guys. Everybody.
Yeah.
Our generation is the socialist generation. Everybody talks about socialism.
Yeah.
Well, I got curious, and looked into it. I looked at its failings, which is pretty sufficient. It was pretty big, and also I looked at its successes. I think, honestly, the obsession with socialism and also socialism's obsession is, the moral agenda of industry.
Yeah.
And the thing is, industry only exists for the sake of the people. It doesn't exist so some faceless corporate dude can, drive a Lamborghini and bang schoolgirls.
Yeah.
What it comes down to is that workers have a place where they can ply their craft, whether that mean, use the muscle in their arms, or be able to say, hey, I'm a jeweler, or hey, I'm really, really good at, making jewelry, or I'm good at, knitting even, anything, any like specific craft that somebody can be good at. I think that can be considered an industry.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times I think that gets overlooked, and I think a lot of people fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
I think a lot of workers end up just being considered... This is how I think a lot of corporations, I would say every corporation, looks at their workers. They're just matter of fact. They're just there. And they don't look at them like, well, that's the lifeblood of how I make my living. They don't look at these workers like, oh, these workers put my kid through college.
Yeah.
No, they just look at it like, shut up to your job and, excuse me, I'm going to slip off to my lake house for a few days.
Yeah.
I think it's disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist. I don't subscribe to any real ism. I guess I'm far too reactionary of a guy. Like, I'm not the guy you want at your rally. You know what I mean? I'm the guy that's just going to be like, yeah, well, screw you. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to, like, see that guy and go, we need to vote for that guy. You know, like, nobody's going to. For me, it's just, I'm just a pissed off guy that I've worked crappy jobs since I got out of high school. I never went to college because I was raised with a very hardcore working class ethic. You know, I've seen, I won't say who, but, you know, family members that are self-made and made businesses for themselves and did very well with them. And so, yeah, it's like, it's easy for me to listen to what they have to say and agree because there's evidence.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, go out and get your own, you know, and it's like, there you go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that your last name in the community that we're from has a lot of weight, has a lot of standing to it because of what they've done in the community.
And I guess I can say, my father owns a jewelry store with his brothers, and my father has always been a very, I guess you could say, an old school craftsman. You know what I mean? Just watch. Like when I was a kid, I'd go up when I was in high school. After school, I'd go hang with him for just a little while. You know, because I felt like I didn't see him enough sometimes. Like, you know, not because he was never home or anything. It was literally just. I went home, and I was like that angsty, angry, like punk rock teenager. I was in my room.
Yeah.
So I was like, riding with a buddy of mine. I was like, hey, man, take me to see my dad real quick. Let's go holler at my dad for a minute. And I just remember walking up these stairs into this repair room, and it's dusty and not even finished yet. But I go in there, and my dad's just in there with his loop in, just working on something, and it was just so... It was like something from like the freaking 1400s, man. It was just watching my dad be a craftsman. It was like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And,
so that makes me think of a couple things that I want to ask you. So first, on the topic of unions, the second question will be on the topic of like co-ops and owners kind of owning or having a vote in their company that they're a part of.
Yeah.
So when it comes to unions, do you see... Okay, so when we think unions... Right. We think like the nurses unions, the teachers unions, unfortunately, the police union, and like assembly worker unions, the Teamsters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you say police union, it just makes me sound like it sounds like a science fiction novel. You know.
But when we think of unions, we often think of these big organizations that are nationwide, and usually for companies or workplaces that are big in and of themselves.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, say, your father owning a jewelry store, and he had, I don't know how many employees he has, but say he has 10 employees.
It's all family.
Okay.
So it's like, let's say 6 people.
Okay. Well, say he had 10 and they weren't family. Okay. How would a union be able to operate if at such a small scale? Is that even possible?
I don't think it is. Because the practice of unionizing really does come from the practice of democracy. It really does come from, the people having a voice, the people wanting what they want, what they've always wanted, and then that becoming manifest.
So, in those cases, do you think that workplace co-ops are the answer, or something, I guess, a little more strict from the federal government? Is that a solution?
Well, I don't believe in any federal involvement when it comes to small business.
So how might... people who work at a small business that still and I'm not saying anything about the jewelry stores, but how would they be able to ensure their rights when a big union cannot form?
Well, I think there should be a union that does relegate something like that. I don't think that the government should just be able to say, "Hey, you're going to do this," because that can backfire. But yeah, I think there should be, if you want to get unions involved in small businesses, I think they could be a relegating force in, hey, this state is a co-op state, or whatever, like Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, whatever.
Yeah.
I think unions should be given that power.
So I know strike is one of the most powerful assets of a union, or
that's the biggest weapon they have,
or union adjacent type organizations. If it's a small company that has just a few employees and they cause strike, it's much easier for a company
just to replace them. Yeah.
In that place. Yeah.
Well, I won't go into the tactics that are sometimes used by unions. To be perfectly honest with you, tactics I don't disagree with. Because frankly, I don't think just because somebody got rich off of mommy and daddy's success, so they went and started a business, I don't think that gives them the right to exploit their workers.
Yeah.
I think if a union steps in and go, maybe you come to work tomorrow and your doors are locked.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm standing in front of them.
Yeah.
I do think that, I'm not afraid to say this on camera. I'm really not. I'm not really afraid to say anything on camera. I don't have a problem with the union, whatever union it is, bullying a small business owner because he's freaking exploiting his workers.
Right.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I won't shed a single tear for that guy. And if it runs him out of business, boo-hoo.
So what do you consider the first step across the line of exploiting workers? We, of course, know the extremes, but what's the line of what is exploitation and what is just not being a successful business?
Well, I think it's a really nuanced conversation. Because you can really talk about exploitation. I mean, exploitation is up for grabs, really. It's up for debate. In my opinion, I think that rigging a system to where the workers literally have to have panic attacks. Oh my gosh, I got to get to work. If I'm a minute late, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, dude. And there are companies out there, I'd say a majority of companies out there are pretty stringent about their, you better be on time. And it's like, sometimes I can't be on time, dude. We live on planet Earth.
And there's the whole thing with most companies, but I've only really seen it in my personal experience with large companies. Mm-hmm. Like we both know what we're talking about.
We do, don't we?
Where they ask this very strategic question of, do you have a reliable
mode of transportation? Good God, that
essentially question. The legal way of asking, do you have a car? Which they cannot ask. So they ask you that. And so if you are a couple minutes late because of whatever reason, it could be a very understandable reason. And you just lost points or however the system works, or if you're a temp.
Yeah, and they use that as their shield. It's like, we asked you if you had reliable transport. I'm like, dude, I ran over a broken bottle. What do you want me to do?
Yeah. And life is extremely dynamic. There's no such actual thing as reliable. Things do come up that are completely beyond control. And so there are things that come up beyond control that aren't excusable. I understand that. A business has to operate as a business.
Absolutely.
But there are plenty of things that come up that are out of control, that are completely understandable, that these larger businesses will not... They just won't listen to your reasons.
Well, the thing is, like I've said, one of the many brass rings that a lot of companies will hand you is that we're a family here. Well, let me explain something to you about family. I disagree with probably a majority of the people that a majority of the family members I have, like politically. I go out of my way to not even talk politics with a lot of people that are my relatives.
Yeah.
If I was stranded on the side of the road with a flat tire, there's not many of them I couldn't call.
Yeah.
Even the ones that I'm sure think, Joe's kind of a weirdo, huh? They would come and get me. Well, this so-called, business. So, we're a family.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll fire me. You'll take my living away from me.
Yeah.
You will take food out of my kid's mouth because I got a flat tire.
Yeah.
We're family. Is that how that works? So that's kind of like the kind of overly westernized trash that a lot of workers are fed by garbage companies.
Yeah.
That only got big because they were the first. They were the first of the big businesses.
Yeah.
These long-running dynasties that have just yet to fall. They're just there forever. They can just say whatever they want, do whatever they want. And the workers just have to sit in the middle and suck on it.
I do want to kind of talk about both of our past experiences in the hard manual workplace without naming names. So let's just say we both actually did work for the same place, and we'll call it Company Inc. And they
Company Inc.
They are an assembly line, a very large one.
Yeah, they are. They're very hardcore. They are running day and night. I have seen people have heat strokes.
Yeah.
and fall down and hit their skull on the pavement. They drag them off the line, and then 10 seconds later, the line is moving.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, that guy could be dead.
Yeah.
And I have seen people walk out of that place in tears.
Yeah.
Because they, let's go down the line here with this.
Pun intended.
Yeah, go down the line, yeah. Let's go down the process with this. There are people out there that have missed their kids' birthdays, that have missed football games, baseball games. I know, too, personally, that have missed their children's birth because they were at work.
Yeah.
And then they'll try to lie, and then the company will try to lie to you and say, "Oh, we would never make it." Give me a break. But yeah, I mean, there are companies out there that will literally lie to you and just say, "Oh no, we would never fire somebody for." But no, I have seen people, and I'm not just talking about the company we both know. I'm talking other companies I've worked for.
Yeah.
I watched a guy lose his job because his wife was literally about to give birth, and they didn't know, how it was going to go. Yeah. He had to go. He had to be there. I watched them tell this guy, "You won't have a job when you come back."
Yeah.
And that's the thing right there. It's kind of like, not only, and it was another worker. I don't care if you're a supervisor or something like that. You're still a worker. You're not the money-obsessed douchebags up there in Corporate Hill.
Yeah.
This stuff trickles down. It's taught.
Yeah.
It's an actual policy that is taught.
Yeah. And to clarify for our listeners, this place, obviously, if you couldn't have discerned it by now, did not have a union of any kind. They're union busters. They do not believe in anything.
They are union busters.
Actually, so I worked there for about, I think, 6 to 8 months. I can't quite remember now. It's been so long. But whenever a union was forming, it did happen for a while. Tell us a little bit about how they reacted to that.
Two of the greatest things, like if you form a gang and you threaten somebody, just on doing that, you can go to jail. If you're a part of organized crime, or what is considered organized crime, and you bribe somebody, that's an automatic jail sentence right there. Corporations are allowed to break the law. Pure and simple.
Yeah.
So that being said, there were some very big talks, some very, very eloquent, very passionate talks about forming a union at this place. And they used the two big tactics that corporations are able to get away with: bribery and intimidation.
Yeah.
They pretty much just bribed these workers that were all about a union. Some of them were team leaders and had a bit of a voice, so they had a bit of clout. And they were told, like, "Hey, we will give you more drink machines." Like, that was puerile crap. Like, we'll give you more drink machines. We'll give you a new cafeteria.
Yeah.
It's just stupid stuff. It's got nothing to do with workers' rights. Just these temporary satisfactions, like these temporary belly rubs. It's disgusting. And then they also used intimidation. They used it where it was like, if they try to form a union, they're going to come to work Monday morning with the doors closed.
Yeah.
And chained and locked.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so in other words, for these people pursuing their right to unionize, you're going to fire them. Yeah. You're going to violate the Constitution.
Yeah.
And which means so much to everybody. And you're going to take food out of their children's mouths.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, adults can get by. We can go get a job anywhere. We can flip burgers, build cars, build buses, join the army. Which I would not recommend. Because nobody should have their head blown off for their living. In my opinion. But but you know what? Kids can't. And a majority of the people out there that tried to unionize did so because they wanted to be able to be home with their children. Yeah. But they were threatened and bribed out of doing it.
So here's a question I have for you.
Gotcha.
So first, if you will keep this one brief, because I have another question to go after it. Were the workers of Company Inc. satisfied by these bribes, like a new cafeteria, new drink machines, all this other crap?
Well, obviously, the only kind of personal satisfaction that matters to a corporation is their own. I was personally told by more than a few people that were had some monicum of power. I was told, like, dude, don't even mention the word union, like, because it'll cost you your job. And I'm like, union busting, right there.
Yeah.
Right there. That is union busting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, because there was kind of like this cloud of silence. I mean, it was just this. It was so weird. It was like living in a community of like secret agents or something. It was so weird. It was just this implied understanding of you don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, this was 2 days ago. So I don't know. I don't know if they were satisfied or if they were just, they were bullwhipped into submission.
Have there been any talks of union again since that? Also, how long ago was this?
A few years.
Ago.
Years and years. I'd say maybe 6 or 7 years, maybe.
So, what leads me into my next question is Company Inc. They have maybe that's a couple thousand workers. I can't quite remember now. But of their own. They have several that are temps that do work directly on their line, and also they contract out a lot.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of workers who are contracted out that provide certain services for their assembly line.
Oh, yeah.
So when it comes to forming a union, if it was even possible for Company Inc., or in general, so what could this union look like? I might be ignorant as to how unions work at a low level, but if a union were to form at Company Inc., would that also naturally, I guess, extend to these contractors, or would there have to be a greater union outside that forms for these types of workers?
Well, that's one of the great things about unions is that they're not a commodity. They don't just strictly apply to a certain person's job application. They're like, hey, do you make these guys money? Yes, we do. Well, this applies to you.
Okay, so there's things like the nurses union.
Sure.
My mother was a nurse for I think 3+ decades. Now that was not for like one hospital. That was for nurses in general, whatever kind of nurse.
Right.
So when it comes to say people who work on an assembly line or are contracted by an assembly line, how could that be umbrellaed?
Well, I mean, if it's just like, I think a lot of it is generalizations, because I mean, there are nurses out there that have much harder jobs or much different jobs than, say, Nurse A. I think it's just about title. It's like, are you a nurse? Are you a teacher? Are you a cop? Are you a line worker? Are you a dock worker? Are you a driver? I do know that there's a company out there, a very good company, that I'd like to work for one day, hopefully. Yeah. That they have transfer truck drivers. They have 18-wheelers that, the union there applies to them, but it also applies to the guy that drives the van.
Yeah.
So it's that's just what it is. It's like, do you do this for a living? Yes. Well, then this applies to you.
Yeah. Now, I know everyone, especially when it comes to unions and union busting, in the current climate, everyone really is just primarily referring to Amazon warehouses.
Yeah.
Now, that's a different kind of job than like assembly line work. So if there was an umbrella union for...
You're not manufacturing anything.
Right, yeah. So if there was an umbrella union for manufacturing work, would that be able to apply to things that are still warehouse kind of, or should we?
Yeah, I think that it should. I think if you want to talk about the moral argument of why unions should exist in my opinion, every state, all over the world, yeah. I mean, it's like it's still guys and girls standing around a conveyor belt with their backs and their feet and their knees and their shoulders hurting.
Yeah.
The guys at the end of the assembly line loading the truck, they've probably got God knows how many repetitive stress injuries.
Yeah.
I think it's literally the same thing. It's the same thing. You're still a laborer that is completely unrepresented. I'm just going to be honest with you, and I know this might, people might think I'm a jerk for saying this, but if you actually sit there and expect me to believe that a corporation is going to represent you, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
That's just not reality.
Yeah.
These guys are out for themselves. They are a cabal of money-hungry people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that unions often or at all abuse their power? Abuse that they can take industries hostage? Do you think that that's something that they can do? And if they can, how often?
I might have misunderstood what you're saying. You're talking about the corporation or the unions?
The union.
The union. Well, obviously there's been a lot of which very falsified, but there's been plenty of cases of unions getting up to some pretty rambunctious behavior, thugged out behavior.
Yeah.
There's been people caught embezzling money from the pension funds of unions. There's been, which is it's pretty rough. Yeah. It's just like it's like anything involving human beings is fallible.
Yeah.
Anything. I don't care what you do for a living. I don't care if you're a baker or you're a Teamster labor organizer.
Yeah.
Anything you do is fallible.
Yeah.
Because everybody's got urges. Everybody has is capable of falling on hard times.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about my particular experiences at Company Inc. And I'd love to hear some of yours too.
Do you really? Are you sure?
Actually, yes. I'd like to give some credentials to why we even have our opinions.
Well, yeah.
So I worked there, like I said, maybe 6 to 8, 9 months. I have no idea.
Yeah. Briefly.
It was so long ago. And I was a temp through a staffing agency that works primarily just for Company Inc. And I got in there. And I knew it was going to be like a hard job, it's a manual labor job. Cool. It was going to be the most manual labor. Like the other industries I've been in was service industry, and then today I'm in software engineering. So obviously I've been kind of sedentary around this particular moment.
Staunch.
L'chaim.
You have escaped.
I do look at it that way.
Yeah.
I'll get to that.
It is an escape. It really is.
When I was there, and the audience, well, they have no reason to know, but I am Jewish. I mentioned it earlier, yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm Jewish. I'm very outwardly Jewish. If you look at me, maybe not by my physical features, but by my garb.
You're both barrels Jewish. Yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube or any other video platform, like I have payos, really long payos, and I wear a yarmulke. Often, I actually have stopped. But
yeah.
So I came into Company Inc. You wear a hard hat there. So I had my yarmulke covered underneath that, obviously. I never took it off. I had no reason to at the moment. But when I was first brought on the line, my trainer, which I had one day, it was a 10-hour shift of training. Actually, I feel as though 10 hours is really not enough for some of those tasks. But
yeah,
I was trained by this Hispanic man. Awesome, normal dude. But me as a Jew that no one knew of, I saw how everyone treated him. And most of the people who work at, I won't say most of the people at, did I say the name of the company?
I don't think so.
I will cut it out if I did. Most of the people on the line at Company Inc. Are a mixture of black and white, and then there's some smaller minorities there. I can't speak to what black people face there. I did not see many interactions there, but my trainer, like I said, was Hispanic, and I saw constant ridicule and mockery to him, who was a great worker. He was an amazingly empathetic and compassionate trainer to me. But when I saw that, I immediately knew I better never take my hard hat off, whether I'm in the cafeteria, whether I'm on break, because I cannot let these people, and you know what? I cannot let these people who work here in this particular culture know what I am. Because I will be treated like this, and I do not want the next however long I'm going to work here be that kind of experience.
Yeah, and I mean that's the deal is really you know, I mean we could bracket this conversation off and talk about racism.
Yeah.
But I think a brief comment on that would be a lot of people don't know. I think there's a lot of ignorant people out there who I think because they went to a certain college or because they dated a certain person of a certain color.
Right.
You know.
Yes.
There are people out there that literally think they've got just a good bead on civil rights, and they have no idea what they're talking about.
Right.
Because to first understand, if you really want to defeat racism, you have to understand where it comes from.
Yeah.
The working class is a breeding ground for racism.
Yeah.
It is a deliberate pursuit of self-empowerment. It's something to make yourself feel superior.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you have an entire sector of our country that is misrepresented. And I'm not talking about white people, black people, a race. I'm talking about workers.
Yeah.
When you have an entire sector of people that are misrepresented, underrepresented, they are not given their fair voice. They're not given a fair shake about anything. They're going to pursue alternative means to feel empowered and to feel heard.
Yeah. A really great documentary, if you can find it anywhere. Oh, well, it's on YouTube now, right?
Yes, it is. It's free on YouTube.
By Dia Khan, I think is her name. She's this Muslim woman who had this amazing courage to decide to go into the homes of members of the KKK. And she is a Muslim woman, and she is a brown Muslim woman. She's not like a Western convert or anything. She was from Pakistan, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
And she wanted to know the enemy.
She actually. I found this out that she grew up in Norway.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. She saw white supremacy firsthand because the neighborhood she lived in was absolutely terrorized by skinhead gangs.
Yeah.
So she saw it very early on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and she lived in England for a large amount of her time. She became kind of famous from a BBC interview she had about racism in England and in just Western Europe in general. Not to say it's not in Eastern Europe, which it is. But she made this documentary, came to America, and she infiltrated, if you want to say that. She got to know people who were part of neo-Nazi movements, racist skinheads, KKK. She literally got into their homes.
The National Socialist movement,
National Socialist,
which is like the biggest white supremacist movement in America.
Yeah. She went into their homes and she got to know them, and she kind of taught them a little bit about herself, her culture, but she primarily focused on literally just asking questions.
Yeah, their childhood. How did you become to believe this? What did your parents believe? Did you grow up poor?
And the common denominator was these two things that are also interchangeable, or connected at least, is that the first one is more of a superficial reason, but feeling like a superhero, feeling powerful, feeling good, actually perversely drew people to white supremacy. Because one, if you want to feel powerful or like a superhero, the easiest path is a supremacy movement. It automatically tells you are a god. Or
supremacy is the ultimate. It is the ultimate opiate. Yeah. For the person that does not feel heard, whether they're heard or not, but how they perceive themselves. Yeah. It's the ultimate opiate for people that don't feel heard, that don't feel represented, that don't feel like they're making an impact on humanity. A lot of the times it is a selfish pursuit. Yeah. It's not because they want to belong to a bigger movement, it's because they want to be heard. Yeah. Well, the best way to do that is by tacking on your fundamentals to another fundamentalist movement, which is white supremacy.
And the other reason that people got into white supremacy, I'm not going to count generational as to why you might get into the Klan or something.
Sure. Yeah.
That there's not much reason to it other than that, so I won't get into that. But the other primary reason, so she was with this very prominent member of the Nationalist Socialist movement who was like at Charlottesville, South Carolina. Of course,
he was very proud to be there.
Of course, almost everyone was there. That was the Unite the Right rally. But he took her through, I forget which city, maybe it was Chicago or Philadelphia.
Yeah, the car ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a younger guy. He
was like in his 30s.
Yeah, he would throw out anti-Semitic pamphlets.
I'm actually talking about a different guy though.
Oh, another guy.
Yeah. So that guy was a university student. He was a little bit younger. But there was another guy who was also a shapeshifter.
I know you're talking about now. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So it's either Chicago or Philadelphia. I can't quite remember what city in particular.
Pittsburgh, maybe?
Pittsburgh.
Because it was such a impoverished, working class place.
A greatly depressed town full of working class. And primarily full of working class who just lost their job. So I guess really part of a different class. Mm-hmm. But he literally, without even knowing, without even recognizing, laid out the strategy for recruitment.
Yeah,
which was
that's the handbook right there.
Which was looking for obviously white people who are impoverished, who feel as though the world is against them because of however they perceive what's going on.
You are the victim,
right?
Like that's what they do,
and immediately choosing a scapegoat, whether it's black people, whether it's immigrants, whether it's Jews. They really like to do the Jews and the black people thing.
Don't they? That's kind of like that's their Debbie cake.
Right.
That's their dessert.
So according to them, all Jews own all the money or most of the money. Immigrants are taking their jobs and black people have it too easy. That's the crap that they feed them. And because they're not very culturally diverse in their ways of thinking. They don't know a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with not knowing a lot of people. You might not be social, but they take advantage of that, and they use that fact that they are ignorant. They use it and inject. Well, here's some quote unquote facts for you, and this explains why you're doing poorly, and immediately they got you up.
And that's the thing. It's like the biggest fish hook of supremacy is. I'm going to show you your situation, and then I'm going to show you what these experts believe about your situation. And that really is the biggest thing. And I think, and it's not just white supremacy that does it. I think that every political movement does that.
Right, yeah. Any extremists do it, and the extremists obviously do it to the extreme. Any political movement, wittingly or unwittingly, use those tactics. That's how you convince people. Manipulation, or I'll call it cunning, is about kind of exploiting ignorance by
It is exploiting ignorance. Right. It's not kind of. It's dead on the mark.
And sometimes I will say it is unwittingly. You inject your intelligence or research or your data, however, if it's skewed or not, you do inject it to someone who does not know anything about it. Right. You become the victor, you become the crowned king of that knowledge, and you sway them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's the most effective thing. We're talking about something that is, thousands of years old. It's like Jay Gould, who was he was a railroad baron in the 1800s. He always said that it's really, really easy to trick one half of the poor to kill the other half.
Yeah.
And that's just how it works. And that's how this is how I think people need to perceive white supremacy. Okay, because nobody just wakes up in the morning because they're white and goes, you know what? I'm better than everybody.
Yeah.
Like, nobody does that. That's just not a thing. What I think needs to be done is that there needs to be more research done and made mainstream. Like the understanding of white supremacy and why it's so effective.
Yeah.
Because very rarely are you going to run into a millionaire who earnestly believes in white supremacy.
Unless it's Richard Spencer. Which I think he gets rich off of it. Partially, he sustains
that's his industry. That's his commodity.
Yeah.
But he's a moron. He's a... Have you ever seen him try to have an actually effectively intelligent conversation? It was terrible.
Yeah.
That is not a smart guy.
Yeah. And I do encourage every viewer and listener, person who's listening,
Awesome.
To definitely find, and I may be pronouncing her name wrong. My Yiddish tongue may be overtaking how it's actually pronounced, but Dia Khan. So she's the documentarist, but the name of the film is White Right Facing the Enemy.
Meeting the enemy.
Meeting the enemy.
That's
right. Yes.
Because and I think that's important to put to really put an exclamation point on that, because that's the thing that's so strange. It's not strange. It's understandable, because that's how white supremacy works. She had never met a white supremacist.
Mm-hmm. At least to that degree, knowingly.
Actually, talked to one. Because, if you're a person of color, you're going to run into a couple eventually.
Right. Well, and you can meet several and not know. Like that person from our hometown. I won't say his name.
Glory be.
Well, I met him at the Catapult Tavern.
Yeah.
I had no idea that he was a...
You wouldn't think. And that's the thing. You talk to him, really nice guy.
I had a yarmulke on and everything. And what organization is he part of? Is he part of the Klan, or is he part of...
he's actually not. He's not a part of any organization.
But he's a white nationalist?
He does consider himself a white nationalist.
Okay.
And that's the thing. I met him when I was very young. And he was very good to me, very nice to me. My best friend at the time... he's still a very good friend of mine. Love this guy. My friend JT, really good guy. Who's a Native American, full-blooded Native American.
Yeah.
He knew that, but we ended up going to his house because we were invited there by a friend, and we ended up talking about medieval battles and sword play, and talking about all this history and all this cool stuff. I'm a total sucker for, Really great guy, really nice guy, and I never thought about it again. He was just a great guy. I'd see him around town, hey, brother, and he'd give me the Viking handshake.
Yeah.
Or he'd grab you like that.
Yeah.
It was, I just thought he was this really kooky, really smart dude. He was in the military at one point.
Yeah.
I just looked at him as a great guy. And then I heard him talking politics in a bar one night.
Yeah. On
one of the corner bars in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
was it a Dark Horse?
No. It was another bar that I won't mention.
Okay. I don't care for the Dark Horse. That's why I decided to say.
Yeah.
He was actually kicked out of the bar I just named, called Catapult Tavern, for being upset that a homosexual was singing up on karaoke night. I commend Rob specifically for kicking him out.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing. It's you end up finding out these things about this person. You're like, oh my God. And that's the thing. That right there is the clue. Is that this is still a person we're talking about. Nazis aren't a race. They're not a race of monsters that congealed in a gutter somewhere. These are people that were fed warped ideas. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if they can learn them, they can unlearn them too.
Yeah.
And so I'll be honest with you. You know what? I am a very adamant anti-racist, and I will march against Nazis, and I will punch Nazis if I have to. Because I'll punch anybody if I have to.
We went down into the city.
Yeah, we went to the counter protest down there, and the punks and the Klan didn't even show up.
In case you guys don't know, we're in Birmingham, Alabama right now, and the Klan made several
death threats,
saying that they would come and kill any people who were protesting the police.
And we just showed up armed for bear, which obviously we weren't broadcasting that then, but I'm just sitting there going, I wish you would. I'm like, this is my little wishing well. This is me pouring quarters into that wishing well. You know what this is? This is me wishing you would. And the thing is, I had a boot knife in my back pocket. I was ready to go.
Yeah, I had my baton.
It was dude, if the Klan wants it, they can have it.
Yeah,
but they didn't even show up.
No, I'm glad they didn't show up.
I am too, because I don't want beef. I don't want, because the thing is, we get to the counter protest, and you know what it was? People praying. Mm-hmm. It wasn't people let's break windows. It was nothing like that. It was just people praying. There was a guy giving a sermon. But it was there was Native American women there singing hymns in the Mohican language. It was so cool. And so I'm glad the Klan didn't show up, because they would have really jacked up a really cool, spiritual, beautiful moment. I got to, me and you and the people that, JT and his wife, Christina, came with us. I hope you guys don't mind me mentioning you. Love you guys. it basically, just so you know, just put this in some context, the people that I'm mentioning right now are the people that basically helped cultivate my strong personality. So I probably wouldn't be doing that without these people I'm mentioning. So I mentioned them out of love and out of respect. But and they were with us at this counter protest, and there was no counter protest. It was just people praying and asking for love and a wholehearted desire for unity. You know, like, do you want to? I don't want to see Klansmen and skinheads get punched. I want to see them put their hoods and their weapons down and come join us. You know, like, dude, the world is not, like, the country that we live in is not a worse place because people of color live here. It's better because they live here. And because we figured out a way to come together and love one another and work together and create together and make babies together and do all the cool, weird stuff that human beings do.
Yeah.
And, you know, the world's a better place because of that. And there's nothing but a stack of evidence supporting that.
Yeah.
So
we have gone a little bit off the rails, even though
the rails.
Everything we've said is definitely worth mentioning. But
that's a Republican thing. I'm kidding.
I do want to bring it back to workers' rights. And I'd like to ask a little bit about, were there any good times while working at Company Inc.?
Yes.
And I don't mean the people that your comrades. I mean, from administration, were there any good things?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, you know, the occasional bone gets thrown. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, when you go through, 4 or 5 months of just perpetual hell, and then a bone gets thrown, you're like, oh, yeah, that's great.
So would you say that's a good thing, or that it was something to keep you sedentary?
In the moment, it's a good thing, but in reality, yes, it is a very blatant attempt to keep the individual worker sedentary and manageable and agreeable, and to keep coming back every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't. If you want to talk about the genuine notion, the moral idea of good, not really.
Yeah, I do want to talk a little bit about worker co-ops, that kind of idea. And I want to kind of use the company I'm currently at as an example, which is Scott Howard Consulting, where we are a software engineering firm, consulting agency. Slogan is designing software that fits. I actually love the crap out of that. It's nice and eloquent, and it's like craftsman kind of thing. But so no, we aren't a workman's co-op. I really don't know the pure definition of that, but I do want to give praise to the way we operate. And first, I'll say that the founder, Scott Howard, if you couldn't hear that in the name, he started this company literally from his basement. Yep. Doing software engineering. And eventually his wife came in to help project manage for him. He wasn't like recording enough hours or whatnot. And so he wasn't getting paid enough for what he deserved to be paid from his clients. Mm-hmm. She came in, started project managing. He started hiring people, and they worked in his basement with him. Eventually got an office further down from where we're at right now. We're actually recording in his office with his permission. Thank you. But the way we operate, so no, we don't have where legally or by bylaws workers have like a vote to anything. But anytime something comes up in the company where like, all right, what kind of benefits are we looking at? All right, we are profitable. We have reached this amount of profitability. What kind of benefits do we want to bring to our workers? Right. They don't decide this behind closed doors. We meet in this room we're sitting at right now, and we all discuss it. Our remote workers, we have up on the TV. We bring them in. It's like, do you guys want this? Do you guys want this kind of dental plan, this kind of health plan, whatever? Right. You want this kind of retirement stuff? What do you want about profit sharing? We have profit sharing. And they discussed every decision with us. And they did take our vote. Mm-hmm. Now, there are no bylaws saying they have to, but they did out of the kindness of their hearts. By knowing that we help build their company. It's not just them. They do work. They don't just own the company and then, leave. They work with us too, so they know they can be obviously empathetic to our plight because they're right there with us. Right. I do also want to let it be known that, so I'm pretty sure no one here is like a supporter of our current administration, but most people here are actually very conservative. Mm-hmm. They lean red, yet that these very liberal type ideas are how they practice. They are very religious, and they are very Christian. And when I say very Christian, most people might not understand what that means. But I would say what the Christian Bible actually teaches, these ideas of compassion. And since it's based on the Jewish Bible, it means also how business operates.
Yes.
And they follow these to an almost like an utmost T. I was baffled. I had a couple of different offers when I was offered this or when I was being interviewed with this.
Yeah.
But I had 3 rounds of interviews here. And after the in-person interview, which was the last one, I just saw that this company operates differently. It's not the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just knew I had to jump on board. Like, I knew that these people, they're conservative, they're Christian, I'm Jewish and liberal. We might not get along, but in fact, on almost everything we get along on.
Sure.
Our workers are treated very well. When we can grow to certain benefits, they jump on that.
Yeah.
When we can give raises, they jump on that. They give us bonuses every quarter. They give us profit sharing every quarter.
Yeah.
And they don't have to have a union. We don't need a union, but unfortunately, the rest of the world, other corporations, we're an LLC. We're not a corporation.
Right.
But the corporations, unfortunately, don't operate like that. And they do have to be forced. So they have to obviously be forced by an external influence.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you're talking about, Christian values and Jewish values. I think that, if you look at the New Testament and if you can actually overlook, what it says about, say, homosexuality, which is pretty much the only thing in the New Testament that could be considered offensive.
Well, in fact, it's actually mentioned in my Bible, and most Jews overlook it.
Yeah, it's like because it's a modernization of one's faith. If you actually look at what the apostles taught, and you look at what Jesus Christ himself taught, it's really just, put yourself second, love your neighbor with all your heart. And, it says, your religion is made perfect when you plead the case for the widows and the orphans and you shelter the homeless. That's what it is. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Being a Christian or being a follower of the Jewish faith is literally just about making the world a better place spiritually and sociologically.
Yeah.
And, that's really what it is. And that's why I don't agree with a majority of what a lot of churches teach, because a majority of the churchgoers that I know, quote unquote, they voted for our current administration.
Yeah.
I think it's a godless administration. I don't think it's a person that really holds themselves to any kind of higher standard. I think it's just somebody that holds themselves to the standards of money.
Yeah.
And the standards of a self-inflating ego.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll violate people's civil rights because there's $1 in it. That's really what it comes down to, and I think it's disgusting.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm not going to give that douchebag any free press. Screw that guy. Screw that guy.
Yeah. You know what? Sorry to interrupt your thought.
But before I say this, screw that guy. But I'm not going to say screw the people that voted for him and screw the people that follow him, because you know what? Like I said, we all end up having walks of lives, like a walk of life that ends up leading us to a place where we feel like this is the right thing to do. We should do this. Boom, bam.
Yeah.
You can't hate a person for that.
Yeah.
You can't, because what is it's often said, it's like what is offensive and devastating to this person may be wonderful to this person.
Yeah.
The way you bridge that gap is not through throwing rocks at people and calling people idiots. You have to have dialogue. But that's all I was going to say.
Something I did want to bring up about when it came to race at Company Inc., if I may kind of hint at what I'm about to...
I know what you're about to talk about, yeah.
Do I have your permission?
By all means.
Okay. So, Company Inc. just recently... so there was an assembly worker at Company Inc. Who showed up to work in our current political climate wearing a BLM face mask.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter face mask. And what he was faced with was to immediately go home. Now, he was faced with a choice, changing his face mask or going home. Now, I stand with his choice of, I'm not going to change my freaking face mask.
And he freaking went home.
Yeah. And,
Shoot, yeah.
And so he made the right choice. Unfortunately, he has to suffer for that choice.
Yeah.
Because Company Inc., I don't know if they've made a public stance on this whole Black Lives Matter
They
thing.
won't. They won't.
But they've made a stance now by sending someone home, by having...
Absolutely.
And it's not like maybe he was talking about it, but even if he was wearing a face mask that said Black Lives Matter.
Well, I can tell you one thing, man. They deserve whatever press they get
And I hope,
over this. I hope they end up so congested with protesters that they can't even get a truck in.
and what I really hate
Scumbags.
is that this happened and there's not a union. Because if there was a union, most likely the union would tell all of their members to go on strike because of this. And God, I wish that could
It's a violation of civil rights.
Exactly.
Because here's the thing. This is, and I'll go ahead and say this. It is an African American man wearing a mask, because you gotta, because of all this freaking disease floating around these days.
Yeah.
Wearing a mask, basically clearly stating that, you know what, my life is valid.
Yeah.
And the people that share my race, their lives are valid.
Yeah.
Not more than anyone else, but along with everyone else on Earth.
Yeah.
Our lives matter too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what it comes down to. This guy was making a statement and they punished him for it.
I can fathom, because obviously it's happening, but I can't
It's
understand.
happening for centuries.
Yeah, I can't understand how someone could even disagree with the phrase that Black Lives Matter.
It's. I mean, you know what? I'll be the jerk and say it. If you disagree with the idea, which I'll go ahead and give you the definition for everybody at home. Black Lives Matter is not a black supremacist movement. Now, maybe to some of their members it is. I don't know. But Black Lives Matter was not started as a black supremacist movement. What it means is that, you know what? Other people get representation. We don't. Let's acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So what it comes down to is that, you know what? Our lives matter too. As well.
Yeah.
Not more than yours, as well.
And I've been to several protests here in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
I was there, maybe I shouldn't say, but I was there. I was there on March 31st or 30th. Not March.
Mm-hmm.
What month just happened? A second ago.
What?
Liquor.
Liquor!
What was the last month? That's what I'm going to ask. It's the 6th month of the year now. What's the one before? May?
May! Oh my gosh!
How many days are in May?
I don't remember.
30?
Now you got me so jacked up.
Either way, 30 or 31st. The last day.
Go ahead.
Last day of May, I think. We had a protest. We've had several here in Birmingham. We had one that was a normal, peaceful protest. It was during the day.
Yeah.
And then we were called by a particular, I'm not even going to name him, but by a particular speaker to come to the park that had a Confederate monument. Yeah. We went there and we attempted as citizens to tear it down. We were unsuccessful. It did cause a riot. I hate that a riot happened. I'm not going to speak on the riot right now. I'm actually still processing my philosophies on it.
So it's hard.
It is hard.
It really is. And I can say this, if I can interrupt. I can say this. Riots aren't good most of the time, literally because riots do not involve community cohesion. Because there's a very good chance that a guy that agrees with everything you're saying, his stuff could get burned down and looted.
And so I'm going to not get into it at the moment. I think we could have a whole podcast on just that topic itself for just Birmingham itself. We've had a lot of events here, just like every city. I'd actually love to give the perspective of Birmingham's outlook on this. But
absolutely, yeah.
What I was getting at, I've been to several protests here, not just that one, but I was there at that one. Several after, some before. And a BLM, Black Lives Matter protests. And the majority of signs I see, or at least a lot of signs that I get to see, are they're not the typical just Black Lives Matter or all cops are bad cops. It's primarily like they can't even have large fonts on their signs because they're trying to explain so much. What they're explaining is essentially this concept, which is all lives matter, or Black Lives Matter means that, yeah, all lives matter. We're just paying attention to Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it's like they're holding up a small postcard.
Exactly.
They're just like,
Yeah.
hey.
Because the way people are perceiving these current events...
I can't believe, like you said, I can't believe this needs explaining.
Exactly. But the way some media outlets are explaining it for people...
It's a black supremacy movement.
Yeah, are so ridiculous.
No, it's not.
Right. And something that does come up a lot at these protests when people are speaking at... Not the one on the last day of May.
Mm-hmm.
May? Yeah, May.
May!
Are talking about how black people are often overlooked in a workplace.
Sure.
And it's primarily what they talk about is that black people in large work environments that can easily replace you.
Yeah.
You can't express any disgruntledness about how people treated you when it
Not
comes
at all.
when it comes to race. And just like what I explained, I saw at Company Inc. Like I saw this, I knew I could be victim, and I also knew I couldn't tell anyone at all. There are plenty. There is close to maybe half and half black people and white people that work there. What I saw was against a Hispanic man and fear for myself. But I also knew the people in charge, they did not care at all about race at all. And not in a good way that they didn't care about race. They didn't care about race because they'd fire you immediately. If you said anything slightly upsetting, they'd get rid of you.
Yeah. So it's like, if you try to complain about... basically, if you tried to talk about the hours or the point system or anything like that, you were gone. Or if you tried to come as a person of color, if you tried to complain about racism or a bias or anything like that, you were gone.
Yeah.
And so it's literally like, how dare you, put ripples in the water?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's disgusting.
Yeah.
But that's actually all the time we have. And but I can tell you this: this is pretty much our first episode of Barroom Rants,
Barstool Rants.
Barstool Rants. Excuse me. We're living up to our name, but I can tell you, we're believers in what we say. We're not posturing. We're not some political platform. We don't sit around just talking about the injustices of the world all day, because frankly, that's not our place to do that. That's why we're going to have guests, and we're going to have people that come on and make their opinions heard and make their voices heard, and we're going to shut the hell up and let them voice their opinions, things they've experienced. But you know what? We're also going to give them a place where they can come do that, have a drink, and basically get loose and get weird and talk stupid and not have to worry about adhering to a format. They can say whatever they want, as long as they agree with everything I say. No, not really. But you know what? For anybody that ends up watching this, thank you for watching. But man, this has been Barstool Rants, and have a killer day. Have a good one.